So, I mentioned atheism, of course, but it goes far beyond that. Gods are not the only thing we don't believe in. And in fact, I would say that like church, like any decent church, there's an underlying philosophy, in our case, an atheology, and it basically revolves around this whole question of belief and unbelief. We see society as being so totally obsessed with belief and unbelief in a way that is really unhealthy. It's really magical thinking to suppose that you're believing in something is going to change something. This is kind of childhood stuff where a little kid has a bad thought about their parent, and then something bad happens to their parent, and they think, oh no, I caused it by wishing it to be. And of course, when we have birthday parties, we ask the child to make a wish, as if that's really going to make a difference. It's good, after all, to think about things that you want, to visualize success and so forth. It's good to have goals for sure, but to think that believing or not believing is really going to change what happens is magical thinking. So we are just skeptical of that, to put it mildly. So we're a church of doubt, of not believing in things. We see a great value in doubt and not believing. And unfortunately, the social emphasis on belief and having beliefs, and even NPR, I think, has had a feature, this I believe, like that's so important. I think it's just as important. We all, I think, would agree. It's just as important to say, I doubt this. I'm going to withhold my belief on this or that thing. It's good to realize that what we put our beliefs in are a danger as well as being useful. It can be a danger. And here's one of the things I see all the time online and Facebook and so forth, especially in atheist forums. Somebody comes on, well, you can't explain X. But we say you can't explain X, but that's good because it's an opportunity to learn, to grow and discover. It means that not knowing things is a good thing. Not that we exult in not knowing, but that we are most interested, certainly the fringes of knowledge and what kinds of new things might be discovered. We don't do this X cannot be explained, therefore God, the supernatural. And if you think about it, God and the supernatural are not an explanation anyway. It's an end to exploration. It's an end to learning and discovery. And I have often told the story of my number 2 daughter who came to me, who was very small, and asked about God and so forth, that she was being told by some classmate at school. And she asked me, is it true that God knows everything? And I said, well, yes, that's what they say about God. And she got kind of sad, and she said that she felt sorry for God because it meant that God could never learn a new thing. If you think about it, if there is this wonderful God that people talk about, God cannot even know what it's like to be human, cannot know what it's like to learn a new thing, to grow and learn and discover, because he just is and is perfect and so forth. So our attitude is, don't believe anything that you don't have to. We don't ask, is it believable? Or can we make ourselves believe or pretend to believe it? We ask, is it something that must be believed? And things, of course, we're aware. But even those things, I think we realize it's good to go over the grounds of belief and think about why it is that we must believe it, not just, oh, we have to believe it. We certainly don't believe things because if we don't, we're going to go to hell. We don't ask, could this be right? We often ask, could this be wrong? Well, we ask, could this be right? We also ask, could this be wrong? And most people don't do that as nearly as much as what they should. We should cultivate and spread this idea when ideas are presented, could be wrong. And I think we can all think of things circulating in the public current events right now that not enough people are saying, well, could it be wrong? Because after all, are we trying to be right or are we trying not to be wrong? Which is more important? Sometimes not being wrong is more important.
I think so, yeah.
This is a Thomas Edison quote. People forget all the people that went before that were atheists and unbelievers. Thomas Edison said some pretty skeptical things about religious dogmas. Now, this is something he said that just applies generally, but certainly to superstition and religion and religious doctrines. When you've exhausted all the possibilities, remember this, you haven't. There's still things that people have not thought of. And as Thomas Jefferson said, and I put this up last time too, I think, ignorance is preferable to error. Better just to know. You'll be less remote from the truth if you believe nothing than if you believe what is wrong. Think of all the things that people believe that are wrong, probably wrong, that they fight. It's very important, undeniable, and consequential. It's a truth of existence to say, I don't know. And not enough people say that, I think. Well, they might say that when you sit down at a restaurant, look at a menu, and are trying to decide what to have. But they don't say it as much under more important circumstances. So here's your things that I found on January 17th. It happened, 1706, Benjamin Franklin born. He was a deist, and I think everybody in his era would have been pretty much within their rights to be a deist, because at that time, we did not understand biochemistry, and we did not understand that human beings are machines. There was a guy, a French guy, Lemaitre, who wrote a book called Man the Machine, where he speculated that we were just very complicated machines, which we subsequently have found out are entirely true. We're biochemical molecular machines. So let me skip ahead to 1911. Francis Galton, that's the day he died, this day in 1911. Francis Galton is considered the one of the important founders of the discipline of statistics, and he was certainly a religious skeptic. One of the things he did is he thought he tested to see whether prayer is effective. And he did, as anybody could do today, by just stopping and thinking, well, if it's effective, then it should be true that people who are constantly prayed for to have a long life should live longer. And who is constantly prayed for to live a long life? Well, the royal family. So he compared the longevity of members of the royal family with members of the nobility, of people of similar socioeconomic class. And I guess I probably don't need to tell you what he found. No difference. So one of the earliest proofs, reasons not to believe that prayer does anything at all. A year later, after Francis died in 1912, Robert Falcon Scott reaches the South Pole. Unfortunately, he was not the first, because Roald Amundsen had gotten there a month before. And Robert F. Scott and his party died on the way back. Famous case of an explorer not only failing to be the first, which was his intention, obviously, but dying on the way back. And another Antarctic explorer subsequently pointed out he was on a march to the South Pole, didn't quite make it, they had to turn back, and described himself as saying, better to be a live donkey than a dead lion. So that's always important to think about too. What is more important, your life or some idea of success? And in 1917, the United States bought the Virgin Islands for only $25 million. What a bargain. And who'd they buy it from? Denmark. So although everybody laughed when our current soon-to-be-gone president said that, why don't we buy Greenland from Denmark? Maybe that would be a good idea. There's going to be some problems with Greenland as it thaws out too, because there was a military base up there, Project Iceworm, and as things are thawing out, there's a whole bunch of toxic waste that's going to have to be taken care of up there. But I don't know when the last time any bought territory from another country, but this was an interesting case. I don't know all the details. There must have been a reason why Denmark wanted to get rid of it. And I don't know whether 25 million was considered that much money at the time, but today, oh my gosh, you can't even buy a tiny island probably for 20 million. And in 1920 was when U.S. prohibition began. A year after approval of the constitutional amendment that banned alcohol production, distribution, and sales in the United States, and that was enabled by the famous Volstead Act. You don't hear too much talk about this anymore, although certainly in libertarian circles and in people who talk about political science, it's an interesting case study of banning alcohol. Of course, it was rescinded some years later, but it actually did do some good. It reduced alcoholism and diseases due to alcohol, but of course it also caused the rise of gangsters and people like Al Capone and so forth. But 1920, that's when Prohibition began. 1929, the Popeye character appeared first in a comic strip. How many of you watched Popeye as a kid? I certainly did. Maybe we'll talk about that when we get to the discussion. And in 1991, this is the date that Operation Desert Storm began, with strikes into Iraq to try to reverse Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait. So some things to think about. Here are our principles. We don't really have a creed, but this comes pretty close to our creed. Reason. And we've talked many times about what that is, and I have another presentation coming up where I'll talk about one method of thinking that we often use and how to pick it apart and think about it. But we are all needing to learn it and live it. We think that we are reasonable, or we like to think that we're reasonable, but many times we're not. And many times we're not when we should be, and sometimes we're not when we really need to be anyway. Meanwhile, we want to enjoy life and each other. We are all so lucky, and we often don't consider how lucky we are. I think I asked Elva at the beginning of the year, Happy New Year, and she reminded me how many people today are suffering, because many people suffer, and as we're not suffering, we have the opportunity to enjoy life, not to complain about the things we don't like. We still do that, maybe not so much complain, but think about how we can fix little things here and there. And we want to appreciate what we have. That folds into that. And finally, what put value, meaning, and purpose in? Love. That's, people say God is love, but we have to be love, or we're not going to have it in our life.
True.
Quick reminder on these subjects. Sex is great. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about religion. But when it comes to politics, there are a few things to keep in mind. Keep it dispassionate and academic. Don't get all hot under the collar. If you feel you're something hot under the collar, then that's not reason, that's emotion. Nothing wrong with emotion other than that it tends to cloud our reason. Focus on public policy, issues, questions, not personalities, name calling. It's better to stick to fact, things that are not disputed. So for example, it's not disputed that in Congress, I think there's some kind of movement to have a national hymn, a national religious song, one of the things that they sing in the Christian churches. And obviously that is not a good idea. But it's yet another attempt of certain people to try to commandeer the machinery of government to put their religious beliefs. We should always strive, of course, to be understood, but even more to understand. It's a really good feeling to be understood. And if people agree with us, all the better. But people are never all going to agree with us. So why not at least understand where we're coming from? And above all, respect us. Don't respect their ideas if you don't find their ideas respectable, but respect others and tell them that you respect them. I respect every one of you here. It upsets me when some of you think that you're not being respected or you're being attacked, and I will also always say if I think that that's true, but if it's not, let's cool things down and explain what it is we're trying to get at. Carl Sagan, not a reverend, but maybe put reverend in front of his name. On Johnny Carson, they used to call him Dr. Carl Sagan, but even Stephen Hawking did not go by doctor, much that I remember. But Carl Sagan said a lot of things really very spiritual, including this, that every one of us in a cosmic perspective is precious. Now that's inarguable when precious means rare, usual. Gold is precious because so little of it compared to all elements. And every one of us is unique. What smaller minority can there be but a single person? But what this means, Sagan pointed out, is that if somebody disagrees with you, don't be looking to kill them. Just because you don't like the ideas in their head, that doesn't mean you have to get rid of their head. Because in 100 billion galaxies, you will not find another person just like that. And after all, they'll be dead soon enough. Even the believers, it's kind of hard to understand why they wanted to hasten their being sent off to the next world they believe in. They're going to go there eventually, all too quickly anyway. And finally, let us remember that free thought, not free. We are using Elva Roy's Zoom account here. Wonderful, and really appreciate that, Alva. But please visit and donate at our Church of Freethought.org website. There's a PayPal link. We do depend on your continued support for showing up, for sharing your ideas, especially also financially, and we really appreciate that. The main thing is, of course, you can be an atheist all on your own. We're doing together what none of us can do on our own. And certainly those who are visiting us on YouTube should ring the bell and like us and get our notices and also contribute on our website. But this is our opportunity to really be heard. And thank God we have that opportunity. We have people at this time anyway wanting us to hang us and burn us just because we question their religious dogmas. So help us promote what we hope are your values. Demonstrate your commitment and be the future that you wish to see as Gandhi. And with that, we can go to question and answer discussion. I'd be very interested as to what any of you thought about anything I presented here and things that you would like to hear